Just thought I'd share something that if you're fitting modern petrol engines into old cars, most modern engines are fuel injected, if not all of them at this stage. So one thing you got to do is get yourselves a fuel pump. While you can buy swirl pots and the like, I much prefer to put the fuel pump into the tank itself. And in some cases this can be quite costly with some kits that are on the internet. This tank here is off a Toyota Celica 1977. I think it's an RA2023, I think. Not sure if it's a Jap or an Australian one, but either way it doesn't really make much odds. So what I've done here is I have made a drawing of what I'm going to do, and these guys here are two flanges that I'm going to make, and there'll be a lid on the flanges, and the lid will support the fuel pump, and the fuel pump will be inside in a rolled piece of metal. I may roll out the shape of this guy here, or I may keep it circular. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do in this case yet. More than likely go circular. Anyhow, so what I've done is I printed off to scale one of my drawings here of the flange. This flange will fit into the tank. I have to cut it to get it in, but I'm hoping that it'll fit down that way. So I print these guys to scale, and then I go to the tank. And just in case you're wondering, why is this unusual shape? Why isn't it a circle? The actual inspection hole in this car is shaped like this. So the plan is that if you did need to remove the fuel pump, that you could undo the ring of bolts and lift out the fuel pump inside in, this guy will be attached to the fuel pump, which is attached to the lid. So this is the tank or the reservoir of fuel. This has a hole in the bottom of it to allow fuel in and out, and we can look at that later. So what I've done is that there's two pipes here going to the car. Originally the flow and return from the mechanical fuel pump off the engine. So just nick them off at an angle grinder there. This tank has been empty of fuel now for like years, so there's nothing at all inside, not even the smell of petrol out of it. So print this guy off, taped him down. Because the tank is black, of course you can't really see the black marker. So now what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to drill a series of holes around here and just pop them around. This is like 1mm metal, so it's really easy to drill, and knock that shape out. And when I have the shape out, then I'll die grind it around to make it nice and clean. And I will then, once I have that done, is drill a bunch of holes. I'll make a template out of this. I have a CNC plasma cutter, so I'll cut a template that I will drill these holes through for the bolts that will sandwich one of these guys under the tank, one above the tank. So a bit like my drawing here, one above, one below. The gap in the middle here represents the gap in the tank. The lid then bolts onto this, and there'll be a rubber gasket on that. So first thing is print, tape, mark, drill, make a hole. And I guess this is the point of no return, so onwards and upwards. So there's no secret of drilling holes. Fit in, drill out, get doing it. I could probably just get like a Dremel tool and just cut all around between the holes, which is probably what I'll do. I guess you could do it anyway, not bother drilling the holes. I've done this before and this just works for me. Okay, I've got to the point where I'm kind of finished drilling holes. Probably went a little mad down around here, probably drilled way more than I need to. And I don't have holes drilled along the straight sections here. It's just really where the curve is, kind of to map it out for me. So what I'll do now is I'll use a small air-powered angle grinder I have and cut these pieces, kind of shape them out and just die grind them in afterwards. Of course, if I try and cut this with the paper tape, it's just going to burn and I won't be able to see where I'm going really and make a mess out of it. So with all the little holes I've drilled in underneath it, hopefully, I should be able to see where I'm actually going to be cutting. So you can tell there already, it's starting to show us ugly face around here. There you go. So this is the bit of my cut. So you can see there's a straight section here, and I'll be back down around curved in around here again. Lost a couple of drill bits down here, obviously drilled into the pipes as I was going, but it's all part of the day. So next is a bit of grinding. a little small pneumatic die grinder here with what's like a 3-inch disc on it. Not unusual there. And here's what we have here now. So I've cut basically along all the little holes are drilled, and what I end up with then is like joining the dots. So I suppose I just find it easier this way. And this is the piece then that's cut out. So with this guy out of the way, I'm going to clean this out here. I'm going to cut my 2 flanges, the top and the bottom one. So I'll either use aluminium or stainless, and I'll drill down through those holes. So when I'm clamping the 2 halves together, the ripples that are on the tank here will get flattened out of it. So this will all become flat, or pretty flat anyway. So I'll use a G-clamp or something first, just to kind of give it a helping hand to squeeze it all around and get it flat. So we're back at the fuel tank. I have it up on my workbench, and after drilling all the holes and doing some grinding work here, I've got a basic shape of what I want, and I want to flatten all these ridges out of here. So what I'm going to do to get that to work is the parts that I have drawn up in AutoCAD. I use a program here called SheetCam, and SheetCam allows me to convert my AutoCAD DXF drawing into a cut path, and I'm using a software then called Mach 3, and the Mach 3 is basically a kind of a home DIY type software that you can get to run a bunch of motors through a controller. So I suppose I've made my own CNC plasma table some time back, and just a brief run around. I guess not everybody have one of these at home. Basically I'm using a JASIC plasma cutter, an old PC that runs Windows XP, and just a bunch of stuff I bought online and made some of it and cut it out and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really useful tool to have. So once you've got it all together and you've got it all figured out and you've got it running, once you stick your G code in, you basically hit start and the machine will take control of the rest of the stuff for you. So maybe slightly off topic for the fuel tank, but it's related nonetheless. That what I intend doing here is making a template top and bottom. And let's just do stuff. So this is my flange that I've cut out. I just got to deburr it. The side that you cut from the plasma cutter down looks absolutely perfect. When you turn these things over, not as clean, but I mean for what we're doing here with this, this is potentially a disposable piece anyway. I'm probably going to throw it away. But anyway, you can see the plan is this guy down here. Clean up all the inside with deburr tool. And you can see then the gap that's in there on this guy here. So the next plan is to flatten that out of the tank. So it ain't going to be pretty, but once I start getting it flattened, you're going to get kind of wrinkly things happening and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, I'm going to start drilling these guys down through and putting some bolts to hold this in place. As I squeeze the bolts in, it'll flatten the tank back up for me, and that'll be my preparation for putting in the 2-part epoxy to seal flange top and bottom. So I'll probably make our stainless perhaps and weld in the tops of the screws. So these will be like studs going down into the tank. When I put the ring up from the bottom, we won't have these guys in here. These will be for studs sticking up. The studs sticking up allow the cap to go on, which contains the 2 pipes for flow and return, and the fuel pipe hangs out of that. So rubber gasket then in between. Okay, I'll plow on here. I got my second flange cut out. The second flange is in the tank. I didn't bother putting the inside holes in that one. Like I mentioned earlier, I may remake these out of stainless steel again. So I just cut in with the shears so there's no metal missing, just in case I decide to leave it in the tank. This tank is going to have to be sealed internally anyway.
So he's ended us by widening up the slit, basically, and with a bit of manipulation, we'll actually manage to, manage to stuff him in there. So then what I started doing was using a G-clamp, this guy here, and slowly flattening him around here. It's not looking the prettiest now. It'll never be perfect. So it needs a bit of pulling. So what you're going to end up doing is bending some of the metal down, some of it up, some of it down, and eventually with the two flanges bolted together, you'll flatten out the tank enough that you'll be able to put some epoxy and stuff in that. So now what I'm doing is put in there, lined up this guy as best I could, we'll say, just by eye on my hole, going yeah, sure. And then I drilled in a little hole in here. And I used, to start off that hole there, this is a center drill. I'm into focus there. It's just like a two-edge thing. So they're made of a hard material as well. They're pretty good. They're called a slocum or a center drill. I got no focus there. But anyway, this one is like 6 odd mil on the outside. And then I've got one inside here, my drill here, which is 8 mil on the outside. So I follow in with one and down the other, because the hole here I have, the bolt is like 7. So the plan now is, now that I've one done, get back to the bolt, put it in, put it down the hole. I'll put the second ring underneath here, put a nut underneath, pinch the two of them up, and it's kind of tightish. And then what I'll do is I'll pick another place to drill another hole, and slowly, one by one, I'll pick them all off all around. And so it's bolt, tighten, pick another one that looks good, dip it. You're better off picking ones that are far away from each other to try and get the underflange in underneath to mate up as best you can. And continue on that way. Now this is not finished, so I won't be leaving these studs up like that. If I decide to run with the mild steel, what I'll be doing is putting threaded bar in here and welding up the tops of them so this is flush all around here. Although I could actually leave these up, but I think from a point of view of being sealed, it's best to have them welded and just flashed off like on a belt sander or something like that, so that there's no chance of escape at all. We'll see how we get on anyway. Okay, I've been keeping busy there for the last half hour or so. So what I've been doing is drilling a hole, maybe here, one here, tightening the bolts and getting them in along. I'm not done yet. Down here is the most difficult part of this tank. There's quite a gap here. But I'm starting to pull it up already. The metal is starting to pull up, and some of this guy here is starting to pull down. So I'll keep at that and keep chasing it. You can kind of see here the gap is closing up nicely there. The metal will eventually flatten out. I've also used my G-clamp here, where I've been pulling it in and squeezing it and squeezing it and go around, just to help the metal. If this was a lot thicker, I guess this would help as well. I've made these before, and I made them a 10 mil thick plate. There's a bit of work in, obviously more work in cutting the plates out. And when you have it done, it's kind of not necessary. I mean, you don't need a 10 mil plate ever again. But the 3 mil plate is actually working out fine, just taking my time with it. I mean, this stuff here, the tank itself is probably about 0.8 of a millimeter at max. I don't think it even is a millimeter. But I'll continue now drilling my holes around here and start continuing to pull up these. So what I'm doing is I'm tightening. It's very flat here, so I haven't really concentrated there. You can see it's pretty much flat on the metal here. So it's just this area here, just to get a wrinkle in time. Now, the two-part epoxy stuff is brilliant at taking up gaps and stuff like that. It's really good stuff, and we'll get to that in a while.